designing an open world from the ground up with fun stuff to do is a challenge. Some games reach new heights, leveraging an open world to introduce brand new ways to play. Others present narratives and breathtaking immersion, bridging the gap between video games and real life. However, there are some whose open worlds either don't live up to the potential of their gameplay and setting, or crash and burn by doing everything that we've already seen a million times before, but worse. Some are still good games and even classics, while others not so much. Let's look at 15 open-world games that wasted their potential. Forespoken. As dire as the final product ended up being, Luminous Productions' Forespoken had an interesting premise when first revealed. The idea of exploring a vast fantasy world with magical parkour, sailing over objects, and unleashing powerful magic was enticing. It felt like the team full of Final Fantasy XV veterans was using that knowledge and focusing on what players enjoyed the most about that RPG, its open world. Unfortunately, not only was the story bogged down by awful dialogue and characterization, but Athia felt artificial. The vast empty fields full of endlessly respawning monsters, the fetch quests, and typical towers, which unlock new icons on the map, adding to the to-do list, didn't come together well. There are some interesting optional dungeons and bosses for whatever that's worth. Saints Row. While Saints Row III and Saints Row 4 pushed the boundaries of zaniness and mission design, Volition could only up the ante so much. So with the 2022 reboot of Saints Row, it decided to go with a more grounded approach. Not the worst idea, but it forgot something about the older games, that their activities were varied and fun. By comparison, Saints Row is a mixed bag. Wingsuiting can feel nice, but the side missions were exceptionally repetitive and dated. The gunplay and combat also never really got off the ground due to the toughness of the enemies and how unimaginative it felt. The less said about the multitude of bugs, the better. Updates have improved the experience and added new things to do while reducing some of the more tedious aspects, but Saints Row could have done so much more with its clean slate. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. While Assassin's Creed Origins is where the franchise first embraced the open world, action RPG design popularized by The Witcher 3, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is the game that decided to bloat it as much as humanly possible. Random side quests with abysmal writing and boring objectives like Go Kill X, outposts that felt very similar, a world design that completely disincentivized stealth, forget any parkour, let's not forget the ship management, daily quests, loot grinding, and other assorted time sinks. All of this couldn't diminish Odyssey's best aspects. The storytelling and characters, the visuals and music, the actual good side quests, or how solid the combat felt sometimes. Still, if Ubisoft Montreal had trimmed the scope and focused on quality content, like more memorable side quests, the world could have been truly exceptional. Metal Gear Solid V: The Phantom Pain. To be clear, the gameplay of Metal Gear Solid V: The Phantom Pain is superb and offers so many options for a stealth sandbox experience that it's absurd. Despite how the story eventually ends up, the missions are well designed and memorable. The open world looks gorgeous, but the side ops in it could have used some love. After all, with the tools that the game gives you, having 15 eliminate the wandering puppets, 12 eliminate the tank unit, and a whopping 20 prisoner extraction side ops, like Secure Quiet, are setups to actual missions, which is fine, but there could have been so much more given the sheer scope and reactiveness of the world. No Man's Sky. Post-launch and after numerous free updates, No Man's Sky found its footing by being a sci-fi exploration-focused title. You can build a mech, explore underwater and build a base, investigate the Atlas and the nature of the universe, venture into derelicts and fight horrifying creatures, or become a space pirate. It's a massive experience beloved by many. At launch, not so much. The prospect of a randomly generated universe with countless numbers of planets gave way to boring landscapes with glitchy creatures and excessive grinding. Graphically, it was underwhelming, especially compared to the initial footage, and the lack of promised features, like players being able to meet each other in the wild, didn't help. While it eventually found redemption, No Man's Sky was considered at the time to be one of the most disappointing games ever for the sheer wasted potential of its worlds. Hogwarts Legacy. As controversial as it was before launch, it's interesting how much of Portkey Games' Hogwarts Legacy is a typical open-world game. Your map is littered with icons and points of interest to clear, in addition to side quests and obtaining sick gear, which, for an action RPG, doesn't do anything to alter your playstyle or grant unique perks. It's not the worst, and the interweaving of Hogwarts lore with it all is fine, but it could have been much more. Imagine attending classes as part of a schedule and following a day-night cycle, risking a nightly excursion and trying to sneak back in without getting caught. Imagine side quests, which had an impact on the overarching narrative. Again, there's plenty to like. The companion quest chains are quite good. But for all those hoping for more than just an open world the game, but Hogwarts flavored, it falls short. Far Cry 6. When Far Cry 6 starts, there's the promise of you, Danny Rojas, building up to fight against a corrupt regime. Your loved ones are dead, and you wash up on some sandy beach. From that first gun you acquire, it could have been this grand, non-linear journey to build up support and ultimately take revenge on El Presidente. Unfortunately, Far Cry 6 couldn't help gamifying everything. Loot, heaps of open-world camps to liberate, different ammo types that were best for certain enemies, amigos, allocating rebels, crafting, a rooster fighting game controversial for essentially being animal abuse. The sheer list of things the game inundated you with is insane. Granted, this may be something fans love, that same open-world cycle with a cast of interesting characters and near-endless tasks. However, Far Cry 6 can't even deliver the latter, and its world doesn't do anything you haven't seen before. Rage 2. Rage 2's open world isn't as terrible now as it was at launch, where you had to search every nook and cranny for crates in a bandit den to complete it. However, the lackluster variety of these locations, coupled with the dull lifelessness of the world, is still as problematic as ever. Now imagine, at launch, where there were very few enemies, some convoys to assault, which is less exciting than it sounds, and a few races. Some activities like mutation nests and authority sentries are comically easy, making you wonder about their inclusion. The only redeeming part is the combat, and admittedly, the bandit dens and outposts give enough room to flex the fun weapons and abilities, if only the rest of the game facilitated that in interesting ways. Absolver. After the incredible Sifu, it's easy to forget that Slowclap used similar combat in a somewhat open-world setting. Absolver presented itself as this free-flowing title, where you could challenge almost anyone in its world, customizing your moveset and finding the best combos. However, not only were the controls finicky and the mechanics frustrating, but the world itself didn't offer much to do. It's a shame because the aesthetics and this premise of starting from the bottom, battling tougher opponents in this visually distinct world seemed cool. Alas, it wasn't meant to be. Crackdown III. From teasing extensive cloud-based destruction to relegating the technology to a boring multiplayer mode that quickly died out, and instead opting for a generic open world, Crackdown 3 had its problems. The long development cycle, multitudes of studios involved, and the departure of Crackdown creator Dave Jones certainly didn't help. However, for a franchise that delivered an interesting setting in Crackdown 1 to be followed by go here, destroy base/enemies/vehicles, and then kill the boss, is certainly something. Sure, it could provide some dumb fun if you zoned out, but given all the hype and potential, it all felt squandered on a subpar open world. Mafia III. Mafia III's narrative is pretty good, tackling subjects like racism in the late 1960s, New Bordeaux based in New Orleans, and presenting exceptional characters. Its open world is a different subject altogether, as you're forced into the gameplay loop of interrogate, kill, steal, and kill some more ad nauseum. This is repeated for each area until you get to the leader, and then you do it all again for the next area, with little gameplay variety. Though the late game could provide some interesting choices, the fact that you had to suffer so much repetition to progress the story was annoying. All the technical issues at launch didn't help either. Dead Rising 4. You could argue for and against the timer's removal in Dead Rising 4, though adding it back in the paid DLC is shady. However, even with it, the open-world experience felt so bare bones and boring. You go through Willamette Mall, such as it is, clearing safe houses of zombies and leveling them by completing side missions. It's also possible to pick up anything and use it as a weapon, just like the original. There's even a power suit for some reason. The zombie killing is what it is, but without a solid world design backing it, everything felt routine, and a big step down from the first game in almost every way. Just Cause 4. Where do you even start with Just Cause 4? If it's not the world and its regions feeling almost indistinguishable, it's the lack of C4 and grenades for creating all kinds of destruction. You still have plenty of tools to make that happen, but liberating places feels off, especially since enemies still hang around in the area. And there are tons of boring fetch quests and objectives instead of incentivizing you to cause wholesale destruction. Whatever destruction is there feels toned down and insignificant. Throw in terrible performance and bugs at launch, not to mention the awful vehicle controls, and it was the perfect storm of controversy before Avalanche implemented fixes and updates. Deadly Premonition 2. To say that Deadly Premonition isn't for everyone would be an understatement, but Deadly Premonition 2 is especially difficult to recommend. It doesn't look great, which is to be expected, though the awful performance on Nintendo Switch is disappointing. For a game like this that provides more freedom and stuff to do, from bayou rides and bowling to skateboarding, the town of Le Caire has nothing especially remarkable going for it, feeling lifeless most of the time. The presence of boring fetch quests and fillers only adds to the doldrums. Even for the most dedicated fan of the first game, Deadly Premonition 2 doesn't rise above the rabble. Dynasty Warriors 9. Who knew Dynasty Warriors in an open-world setting could be dull and lifeless when it's not downright annoying? The world is empty, with few enemies and almost nothing to do. It's crazy since this is based on the romance of the Three Kingdoms. It essentially exists as padding while you trudge your way from one point to the next. Worst of all, that freedom works against the game since you can go straight for the enemy leader and eliminate them. Even if you go through all of their soldiers, there's no pretense of strategy or events, making each battle feel the same as the last. Poor AI, performance issues at launch, bugs, graphical issues, that's all bad enough. But the main revamp, the world, feeling like a placeholder, is the biggest disappointment. That's all for now. If you enjoy what you saw, please hit the like button. And if you're new to the channel, now is a great time to subscribe. We upload brand new videos every single day. After subscribing, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you next time, right here on GamingBolt.